Hello, geometers and seekers of general truths. We continue our study of analytical geometry by finding the location of midpoints on an xy plane. So let's look at this example. We want to find the midpoint of A 3, 1 and B 9, 1. Those are the locations. So as usual, I'm going to start with my XY coordinate plane here. I recommend you do the same thing. We can do just a rough estimation. We don't necessarily have to name every location here perfectly, but let's say that this is, we'll space it out, right? So 3, 6, 9. Okay, we can go in increments of 3. And then 1 is up here, let's say. So 3, 1 is A and 9, 1 is B, right? And we want to know what is the midpoint between these two. Where is the exact middle? Okay. So one simple thing that we can do is you can see that the middle here, the midpoint here is exactly in the middle, right? As hence the name midpoint. And what we can do here is notice that the y coordinates are both 1. So what we can do is we can take the average of the x coordinate. We know that this length here must be 3 and this length here must be 3. Okay? So we can take the average of the x coordinate. I'm saying the x coordinate of 3 plus 9 divided by 2 because it's right in the middle, right? So this is 12 over 2, which incidentally is equal to 6. Okay, so the midpoint right here has an x coordinate of 6 and a y coordinate of 1 because it's still on this horizontal line. Okay, so that's the midpoint. These threes here represent the distance between A and the midpoint, between B and the midpoint. Okay, so the main idea here is we take the average of the x coordinate. Okay, and one of the reasons we're allowed to do that is because we know that the y coordinates are both the same thing. So whenever the y coordinates are both the same, we can find the midpoint just by taking the average of the x coordinates. And this is our answer, 6, 1. Now, let's continue and let's look at a slightly more complex example. All right, so this one's a little bit more complex because what we're asked to do is to find the midpoint of 2 points that are not in a horizontal or vertical line with each other. So I'm going to use some graph paper here to kind of figure this out. I'm going to set my scale here rather than mark it up on here. I'm going to say that my scale is 1 to 1. So that tells whoever's reading this that every tick mark is 1 horizontally and vertically. So for point A, I'm going to go over 3 and up 1, 2, 3, 4. This is point A, right? And for point B, I'm going to go 5, 6, 7, and then this is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then go down 2. So this is point B. Okay? And again, I want to find the midpoint between these two red lines right here. Okay, and again, what makes this a little bit more challenging is that I don't know. It's harder for me to figure out because they're not on a perfectly horizontal or vertical line with each other. All right, but the idea that I'm going to use here is similar to what we did before. We're going to use some right triangles again. Okay? So I'm going to draw this line right here. Okay? And I know that the coordinate of, so I have a vertical line right here, and I know that the coordinate of this particular point must be 3, negative 2. Okay. And then I'm going to draw this line right here. Oops. Except I'm going to do a better job than that. Okay, so let's try that again. Right here. Okay. So now, and again, just a reminder, this point here has coordinates 7, negative 2, and this is 3, 4. Okay. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to figure out the average or the midpoint of each of these vertical lines and horizontal lines. So the midpoint of this again is the average of 3 and 7, right? So that's going to put me right at 5.5. Okay, so 3, 4, 5. I'm sorry, let's put right at 5. So the average of 3 and 7, right, so 7 plus 3 over 2 is going to give me 5. So that gives me this midpoint. And I'm going to use a different color for this. Let's use the green one. Okay. And here, the average between these two, I'm going to average the y coordinates. So 4 and negative 2. 4 plus negative 2 over 2 is going to give me 1. So this is going to be my midpoint for that. Okay. And I'm going to take these and I'm going to extend it in each of these directions. Okay. And this is going to give me the midpoint of my line. And I'll explain why that is in just a minute. Okay, so I'm going to explain why this point right here is sort of the magical spot. So this point here has a coordinate of 5, right? That's this x coordinate, and 1. That's the y coordinate that we've calculated here. Okay. So what I've effectively done here is I've taken the average of the x coordinate, 3 and 7, the average of that, and the average of the y coordinates, 4 and negative 2, and that gives me my midpoint, which is 5, 1. Okay. And if you see here, I'm going to clean up this line right here just a little bit. One of the reasons why that works is we have effectively produced 2 right triangles. This one, okay. And if you see why, if you look at these 2 triangles, they are congruent to each other, right? So this triangle here and this triangle down here, they are congruent to each other by side, or side angle side. They're still right triangles, right? The legs are exactly the vertical legs here are exactly the same length because we just took this red line and cut it in half, this vertical red line, and cut it in half. And the horizontal legs of the 2 right triangles are exactly the same length because we just took this horizontal line and cut it in half. So we have 2 right triangles that are congruent by side angle side, right? Therefore, their hypotenuses or hypotenusi must be congruent as well. So this from A to the midpoint here and from B to the midpoint here must be the exact same length. So this green dot here is precisely the middle point between the 2 of them. So the big idea that we take away from here is when we have to find a midpoint, what we want to do is we want to take the average of the x coordinates and the average of the y coordinates. So let's formally state this again using variables, that if we have 2 particular points in space, right? So let's say that A is over here, x1, y1, okay, and B is somewhere over here, and its coordinate is x2, y2, right? Then the midpoint M, which is directly in between those 2, would have coordinates of the average of these 2. So the average of x1 and x2 is, well, the 2 of them added up and divided by 2. And then the average of y1 and y2 would be the 2 of them added up and divided by 2. Okay. So there you have it. We can use these 2 particular, or this particular formula here to help us find the coordinate of the midpoint. As always, thank you for watching. Ask questions when you need it, and have a wonderful day.